Alrighty. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to another SmudTalk. We were doing something a little different. Usually we have Smudcast people talk about a video. Now we're doing a blog post. Now, Vice is not exactly the greatest. How do we explain Vice? It's kind of a media site, a news site. It does a bunch of things. I don't really follow exactly. It has a bunch of other categories. But they post a lot of stupid things, and we talk about them. And it just so happens...
Putting it mildly.
I mean, I don't really read them, but when someone shows me, it's like, okay, that's silly. Let's get someone who knows what they're talking about, who knows the media or the topic at hand, and sees what exactly is going on here. And more often than not, these supposed journalists are graduates or going to school. They're usually women, and they're left-leaning. So it's like, okay, we see where you're coming from. But does the argument have any merit? So we have Voice in the Radio with us today, and he is, I would say, a self-avowed expert on the Dark Souls game or games, and everyone who enjoys Dark Souls either says, that's cool, or they just know every single detail conceivable to man that have been written down. And there's still stuff they don't know. The game is so big, there's so much lore, there's so many items to discover, so many strategies, tactics, etc.
People have entire careers on YouTube just based around trying to piece together what everything is for this ridiculous series.
It is quite interesting because it reminds me, this is back in the day, before Square became Squaresoft or became bought out by Enix, there was a little game called Bushido Blade. And this was late 90s, I think. And I don't know if anyone remembers Bushido Blade, but it was a game where you get to choose a certain character and a certain weapon, and it was pretty much one-hit kill. And that was the whole thing. And sometimes you could hit their arm or hit their leg, and they'd be like walking on a stump, or they couldn't swing their weapon properly anymore. And I really liked how lethal and dangerous and an adult it was, just for being a standard two guys with weapons coming at each other in melee combat. And if you look at the Dark Souls games, they are brutal. They are visceral. They are like one-hit death, possibly, until you get some armor, until you get some health. Then you might be able to get 2 hits in there. But there was parries, there was blocks, there was dodges, very similar to Bushido Blade. So I remember seeing...
Delicious.
Yeah, I remember seeing when it came out. You're like, hey, that reminds me. And then after I think the first game, 2 years later, all these other games started popping up just like Dark Souls. And it just was like clone after clone. And we're talking dozens, if not hundreds by now, of that style. How would you call, what would be the Dark Souls style in terms of a genre? Like how would you characterize it?
People often refer to games that are like Dark Souls in that way. It's really difficult. You've got an open world to explore. Checkpoints are rests. You've got checkpoints to explore massive levels. There's RPG elements to upgrade, big bosses, lots of difficult enemies. They just tend to call it Souls-like, and it's memed at this point that a load of things are Souls-like. So Crash Bandicoot was a Souls-like game because it was difficult.
Really?
Even though it really wasn't. I think Souls-like or Souls clones go to stuff like Hollow Knight. I'm trying to think of stuff off the top of my head. What's the really weedy anime one?
Castlevania.
Neo 2.
Oh, those are 3D though. You said a Hollow Knight. That's a 2D side scroller.
Oh yeah, it refers to a load of things. Salt and Sanctuary is another one.
Oh, that one's really weird.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, and it's just used as a sort of loose expression to describe a game that is difficult with RPG elements in an open world.
Now, would you say you are familiar with all those other genres or Soul-like games, or your focus is primarily just Soul games?
I've played a few. Never finished Salt and Sanctuary because I didn't think it was particularly well done, and that's going to get a load of people to probably not like me. Did play Hollow Knight. I've done Bloodborne and the Sekiro.
For sure.
Neo 1, not done Neo 2. So yeah, I've done a fair few.
So what's the general, like, these are all very hardcore games. They're not for the casual player. What is the appeal?
The appeal is in the difficulty, I think. So it's all about, there's plenty of games that can offer a challenge, but there's ones where I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's wanting to like feel like you're hitting a brick wall, and you're actually getting more and more skillful as you chip pieces off it slowly and slowly until you eventually break through. And I think that's the sort of masochistic but addictive sort of gameplay that people enjoy if they're looking for a challenge. And get what's a game for if it's not either entertaining or challenging or both?
I used to think of it as kind of like a Castlevania meets Devil May Cry meets Mega Man, because those three games, two of them are very fast. Mega Man, and people love the level design of Mega Man. It's very quick. But then you have Castlevania and big, expansive worlds and all these platforms and monsters that pop out of nowhere. And it's part horror. It's part survival horror. It's all of these little things, but slowed down and gives you the opportunity to master things, as opposed to Mega Man, which is really like a Capcom game, is really quick and fast and arcadey. This is the opposite of that. It's just very slow. Take your time.
There's lots of variety. So Bloodborne is the other one that the creators of the Dark Souls games did, and that's along those lines. It's still got very much the same elements, but it's a far quicker game. You're punished for actually being defensive. In Dark Souls, it's all about surviving as long as you can until you can get a hit in to kill your enemy before it kills you. Bloodborne is the exact opposite, whereas if you hold back even for a moment, things are going to jump all over you. You have to be aggressive. So there's plenty of ways you can have a game designed so it acts differently to Dark Souls, but ultimately it's still got the same gameplay elements in it.
So we could have lots of conversations about the dimensions of the Souls influence, the Dark Souls, the trilogy influence on games that are like that, also by the same company.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's all about the best way I can describe it is playing a game that is so difficult, and I know that many people might think of that as like a condemnation against the game. I mean, there are people that exist, the gameplay critics and what have you, that say it's too hard. But the reward, the addictive part of a game like that is the visceral satisfaction you get when you finally overcome your demon, so to speak, be it a boss or an area or just trying to get a build that works best for you, and then suddenly everything clicks. And I think that's where the satisfaction comes in for a game like this.
All right, let's go.
There are plenty of people that play these games and pay no attention to the story whatsoever. That was me when I first picked up the Soul series. I just thought, oh, hey, this is cool. There are dragons and demons and all that. I'm not particularly interested in the story because I don't want to go away and spend 300 hours looking at all the item descriptions to try and piece together the lore. But there is a story in there. I cannot explain it thoroughly if you were to ask me right now, but there is one in there, and it's definitely not about capitalism. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, well, that's the article in question here, and it's just a strange title to see I guess someone who's played the game and who says, okay, the world of a medieval fantasy monster infused adventure game
message coming in
has
patching it through
a story about like, how do you even begin an economic model in medieval times when everyone's struggling to survive? I don't know, but
it's odd because this is set in a land of like a monarchy with kings and queens, except they're gods and lords with godly powers. So I don't understand how it would be capitalist. I don't know what the monarchy system is, if that's capitalism or more sort of dictatorial.
Well, let's find out, because I'm really curious. But I haven't actually read this article, so it was just too funny to pass up without having someone else with me. So let's get going. If we truly are living in the end times, okay, from software's bleak fantasy world should inspire us to transcend our grim reality and forge a new path. So it sounds as if she's using the Dark Souls game or the genre as a rally cry to say, hey, let us change our ways, humanity, through gaming, which is cool.
Yeah.
I think that's cool, but
I'm all for that.
I don't think that's the message of Dark Souls. But okay, maybe there's something to learn that we're not listening to. Maybe she has inspiration that we don't have when just normally playing it. Let's just find out. Okay, Janice Rose. I'm assuming that's a girl. This essay contains major spoilers. Okay. To live in the year 2020 is to be filled with the sense that the world as we know it is coming to an end. What? This was written in October.
Yep.
A few weeks ago.
I'll essentially agree with that, since the world of Dark Souls is perpetually set around the idea that the world is ending, and it keeps bloody ending forever.
Okay, so I guess pandemic, lockdown, businesses, that sort of thing. All right. It's hard to pinpoint just one piece of evidence, but take your pick. An imminent climate collapse heralded by apocalyptic storms and wildfires. Okay, apocalyptic storms.
Like Australia exclusively?
Well, storms happening off the eastern coast of, or southern and eastern coast of America happens multiple times a year. So that's nothing new. Wildfires been happening multiple times a year as well, even in Canada. So not a big deal. A rampant global pandemic. There we go. So that's a new one. The descent of nations around the world into authoritarian fascism.
Okay.
That's new to me. I don't remember that at all. When did that happen?
I must have missed a memo or something.
I think that was World War II, I think. Jeez. Okay. Failing institutions unable to contain the viral spread of disinformation. Okay, so that's not the pandemic. That's just news outlets? Fake news? Although because she's liberal, she hates, therefore, what Trump is saying. Therefore, it's whatever Trump is saying. That is viral spread of disinformation. And that's a fine opinion.
My word. Trump was Gwyn this whole time. The god of life. I didn't realize.
It's not the dystopia we've been taught to expect. I don't think it was a dystopia or is. But okay. Instead of giant meteors, zombie plagues, and other numbing cliche scenarios, numbingly cliche? Okay. Ours is a harrowing reality of slow burning crisis upon crisis that has never been adequately captured in speculative fiction and pop culture.
I'm pretty sure there's plenty of films and TV and video games out there that depict the scenarios we're in right now closer to Dark Souls.
I think, I can't remember.
Unless there's dragons and undead walking about right now.
Oh, no, but
I think...
I think there was a few years back, actually, a top 10 ways humanity would be, or the world would be destroyed. And it was like, meteorite, plague was one of them, economic collapse, like all these things. So we know all the doomsday scenarios. We've heard of them before. So maybe to her, they're numbingly cliche, but they're all happening at once in some cases. I don't know. I'm curious how a fantasy survival horror adventure game plays into all this, but that's why we're reading it. As far as I'm concerned, thank you, journalist. There's one game that comes close to evoking the vibe of our end times, and that's the bleak, decaying world of Dark Souls. Okay, so what's the doomsday scenario in Dark Souls? What are you trying to prevent?
So, and I probably won't get this 100% right, as everyone has a different take, but going exclusively off the games and what dialogue I do know of, the world is set after a race of gods appeared, Gwyn being the lead of them, and they defeated a set of beings called the Ancient Dragons and established a new age, an age of fire, because there's some kind of big flame that granted them godhood, and sustaining that flame keeps their dynasty alight, basically. If the flame goes out, then a new age comes in, and there's an attempt by Gwyn, the big boss and the god of the game, to extend the flame so he can keep his rule, because when darkness falls, that's when humanity takes control of the world, and they want God. They want to rule for as long as they can.
Okay, so
there becomes a big perpetuating thing of keeping the flame lit to keep the world going. But when Gwyn sacrifices his soul to do it, he creates something called an undead curse, where basically people continue to live until they go mad and lose their humanity, and that creates this sort of undead group, which are referred to in the game as hollows. And your character is basically tasked 1,000 years after all these events to go off and, either light the flame yourself or extinguish it and bring in the Age of Darkness.
Okay, so the Age of Darkness is basically mankind without any gods.
Yes.
And that's
without leadership, yes.
Okay, so interesting. I mean, that's kind of like, yay, good, destroy all gods. Some people might actually want that, but obviously...
Well, the thing is, you don't know, because everyone you speak to is basically an unreliable narrator, but in Dark Souls 1, you don't know what the Age of Darkness actually brings. You just know it's related to humanity in some way. And everyone talks about how it would be a really bad thing, but of course they're the people that created the Age of Fire in the first place, so of course they'd say that.
Right. So it's basically a giant religion of a god, a literal god or gods. And
yeah, there's several religions, but yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's essentially it. And I'm going to ignore Dark Souls 2 because the lore in that game is nonsense and it's not exactly related as close as 3 is. But 3 is set once. There's a theme that the cycle continues of people either giving their life or attempting to extinguish the flame, and it goes on and on and on until basically someone who's tasked to sacrifice themselves to the flame says no, he doesn't want to do it, and then the entire world is put into limbo because of this person's selfish desire to not want to die.
It's sort of a non-heroic hero, I guess.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Okay, let's keep going. So that's the general idea of the Doomsday scenario in Dark Souls. Interesting. I don't know how the hell that relates to today, but let's keep going.
Yeah.
For a game with lots of exploration and very little dialogue, the lore of the Souls series is astoundingly deep. Is that true?
Yes. The storytelling is extremely flaccid. It's really inefficient because no one's got the same way of explaining the story as anyone else unless you spent 500 hours on Wikipedia.
Oh.
The lore is extremely, extremely deep, though. That is true.
Okay.
It's also very hard to find. But yeah.
Using environmental storytelling, which I'm assuming is more than just words, that rewards patient and perceptive players, Hidetaka Miyazaki's trilogy is a profound exploration of human nature, fate, and how those with power can distort our perceptions of the world. Okay, that's interesting.
By the way, I say I ignore Dark Souls 2 because it's essentially a story that sits parallel and has very little affiliated to 1 and 3, and 1 and 3 just sort of come as a complete package. They're far more interlinked.
It seems as if the second trilogy and most video game trilogies are just...
It's basically you set based on your... It's not entirely dependent on the decision you make in number 1, but number 2 is a story of, and now this is what's happening in a very distant kingdom, sort of thing.
Oh, it's completely unrelated. Wow.
It's not completely, but yeah, sort of completely.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. There's just sort of like people make rumors of, oh, did you hear this person in this faraway land did this?
So here's the big sentence winner out of this paragraph. In my reading, it's also a parable about the end of capitalism and what lies beyond it. That's okay. So I'm assuming her interpretation is the gods are the capitalists, and the Doomsday scenario is the end.
The weird thing is you never explore any of the games of Dark Souls where there's actually a system functioning. The one that's closest to that is number 1 because it's the most recent. It's since the events of Gwyn sacrificing his soul to keep the flame lit. But there's no actual part of the game where it shows, this is how the system and society of the world works. It might very well have been very, very good, but you never get to see it. There's just different versions of dilapidation.
Yeah. And
so you never explore if it was even a capitalist society. You just see remnants of what things used to be.
It seems like she's using it as a parable, though. So she's comparing the gods, I assume, the power structure, to today's capitalism or a version of capitalism. So maybe that's the similarity. I don't think she's literally saying there's capitalism in the world of barter and whatever used to buy weapons and goods and what have you. I think that's, already capitalism right there. People have money, people want stuff, you trade them, you get your stuff. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
In each installment of the Dark Souls series, you play a nameless undead hero cursed with the unsavory task of reigniting the flame that gave birth to civilization as we know it. Long ago, the gods found this flame and used its power to create the current age, but now the flame is dying.
Yes.
And it's your job to rekindle it or not. Okay, cool. There's a choice. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's always a choice given at the end of the game, and the choice is ultimately each time to either continue the cycle as it is, or to walk away and do something else, and let the flame die out. So then, obviously, the theory is either way, your decision basically results in someone else is going to come along and try and do the job instead.
See, this to me sounds like artificial inflation by banks that control the currency or the amount of currency. So like we talk about we talk about zombie banks like during the recession, like all these banks that are pretty much insolvent, like they're going to die, but we just keep pumping them up with dollars to keep them functioning.
Keep going, yeah.
But they're going to eventually
ultimately it just it prolongs the inevitable, and then just things fall apart even more. And
exactly. So maybe she's talking about inflation in that regard, but she hasn't been very clear yet. But that's again all an analogy. So we have to see how she interprets that. The first time I played through the original Dark Souls, the choice seemed obvious: Link the fire, save the world. Link the fire. Okay.
Yeah.
The good ending, or so I thought. We are meant to believe
it's not.
Okay. It's bad. We are meant to believe that the flame is necessary for humankind's survival, and that without it the world would be lost in darkness. Darkness meaning literal darkness, or what?
No, that bit I'm pretty sure is wrong. The idea is that mankind can't flourish so long as the world remains as it is. Mankind is darkness, essentially. But it's something that was created by the gods as like this is what will happen if humanity takes over. All this bad stuff will happen. When literally, I think the whole point or the message at the end of the third game is that it's not actually what everyone thought it would be, and it's actually not terrible whatsoever.
So it's kind of like
humanity can't flourish so long as the age remains as it is in a perpetual state of decay.
It's like the what's the term I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Not the overprotective parents, but the parents that never let go. It's like we got to protect our children from the horrors of life.
The law, as far as I can understand it, is actually during the Age of Fire, mankind gets cursed because I'm going to just refer to him as the main character because in the lore he basically is. Gwyn sacrifices his soul, which is what he gained to help him defeat the dragons. He sacrifices himself to the flame, and that creates this curse that brands humanity with the curse of the undead. So people become hollow shells of themselves until it's a bit like Alzheimer's, where they lose fragments of themselves until they don't remember who they are or what their purpose is. And that's something exclusive to mankind because of what Gwyn did. So he enslaved mankind as a lower subset of species to fight his wars for him. And then when his age comes to an end, he makes a gambit that basically backfires and curses them. if that makes any sense. It's okay to say no.
I'm still trying to think about it.
It doesn't make sense to many people.
It's interesting. I'm finding that there's a belief in a religion or people that believe the gods are good and that you're fighting for them, and then you realize at the end they could not be good. That's a great way of ending a story, because it allows the audience who happens to be playing a game to make the physical choice of saying A or B. And I think that's good. Lots of games do that, even simpler games from PlayStation. There was a game called Grand Stream Saga, where you have to sacrifice one of your female companions in order to like, you have to do A or B. There's no other option, and you don't know why. You have to do it, and it's always a harrowing thing to do. So I like those endings where it's like, oh, you have to, as the hero, you must sacrifice yourself for some other thing, and you're the one to make the choice.
Yeah.
So I like that.
There's loads of like little stories linked into that. So there were attempts to extend the flame before Gwyn sacrificed himself. One such effort is what creates demon kind in the world of Dark Souls, and that's the remaining gods and their foot soldiers attempt to fend off the demons, but they can't do it, and they essentially like lock them away underground where they can't escape, and so you end up with a world that is full of remaining dragons from a previous war, remaining gods that haven't died just yet because the Age of Fire is still technically going. You've then got demons in the world because of their aborted attempts, and then you've got mankind as slaves who then get branded to become zombies.
Oh, fun. What a wonderful
There's a lot of shit to these games.
And
this is why the likes of VatiVidya exist and have so much money.
That's true. So if you choose to link the flame at the end of the first game, the screen fills with a dramatic explosion as the engine of the world is reignited and a new cycle of Civ begins. Okay. If you choose this option at the end of Dark Souls 3, so there's the same choice. The flame barely grows to consume your character, a pitiful shade of the god's former power, having grown weak from repeating this process over untold millennia. Okay. So
yeah, the thing is that in Dark Souls 1, the events take place 1,000 years after the cutscene at the beginning of the game that sets up the world building. In 3, I have no idea how long it's been, but it's thousands upon thousands of years, and it's essentially like you've got, if you can imagine a big bonfire, and then to keep it going, you're throwing like a log of wood on it once every hour. That's going to keep it burning, but it's not enough to fuel it. No matter how many of those little logs you chuck on, it will die off eventually.
So it sounds as if...
Which is why, if you can think of it like in the midnight or the twilight version of that bonfire, which is when Dark Souls 3 is set, yes, you're going to provide some fuel to it to keep going, the fuel being yourself, but it's not enough, and it will continually get weaker and weaker.
So you're just trying to bail the water out of a constantly sinking boat. Sinking
ship, yeah.
Interesting. Pretty depressing story, but okay. It's
very depressing.
The more one explores the lore of the Souls series, the more you begin to question who ultimately benefits from reigniting the flame, and whether the spooky age of dark is really all that bad. Okay, it's a clear question to ask.
Yep.
It's very clear from the outset that the character is compelled to bear this burden. The dark sign, a black circle surrounded by a ring of fire, brands the bodies of those cursed with the undeath, doomed to suffer and die again and again. Okay.
Yep.
Jeez. Even further, you come to learn that humans, in fact, originated from the dark soul of the series' namesake. So we are the Dark Souls, essentially.
Mankind is always represented as they came from the darkness.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but it's always sort of like it's a bad title to describe humanity in the game, but the theory goes, or the lore goes, that they appeared from the dark.
Okay, so as this sentence says, the true nature was hidden from humans, and they were bound by the undead curse to continually unnaturally restore the gods' fading powers. So the humans are the ones that are being sacrificed to keep the gods alive.
Yes, after Gwyn gives his own life, yes.
Okay. All right. It feels like a crushing satire of our reality, with working people struggling through countless boom and bust. Here we go. Okay, so somehow this person has taken capitalism and the ever expansion of the money supply into the economic cycle. So we have boom and bust cycles. Our economy is doing poorly. Therefore, we have to inflate the value of the dollar so there's more liquidity, so people can spend more and invest more and bet more and dare more, and all the financial companies or investment companies.
This is a weird thing to say, because she's talking about the 2000 and a little bit further down. She mentions the 2008 financial crisis. I'm gonna look it up. I'm pretty sure Dark Souls was made before that time. So I have the first game anyway. Well, so I have no idea how they would have predicted that.
I assume this person is just come out of college or university, or is just starting it as, I don't know, maybe a journalist student or whatever, and they have an elective course in like Econ 101 or something. Oh yeah, Lord Maynard Keynes, he wrote a book on booms and bust cycles. Yeah, that must be the economy of the day. And that's like one theory of how...
I wouldn't even call it like a boom bust thing. It's a boom, and then it slowly becomes a bust, no matter how much money you throw at it. There's always the sense that, yeah, you can do this, but ultimately, what do you change? You've just kept things as they are. Nothing actually improves.
I love this. COVID-19 has put this arbitrary cruelty in plain view for all to see. So the idea is that because of the lockdown, all the businesses stopped being businesses because no one's buying anything. And we can just see the cruelty of what? Nothing happening? I don't think stopping businesses will show us the boom and bust cycle. Quite the opposite. If you stop people from consuming and purchasing and doing things as we have for the majority of the year, that's the opposite of a boom bust cycle. That's just everything stops. It doesn't matter what economic model you have at that point in time. No one's buying anything. It's a strange observation or logical conclusion to come to. Workers in the U.S. were asked to endure economic hardship as banks were bailed out during... Everything was bailed out, not just the banks. During the 2008 financial crisis, which was caused by Wall Street speculators crashing the housing market with junk bonds. Yes, as a result of the government setting up avenues for the banks to do that. Remember the Bush years, as well as the Community Reinvestment Act in America, at least, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Those are government institutions created to allow people to have the capability to have bad mortgages. And then for people to leverage, like the banks or financial institutions, to leverage those mortgages as a form of equity. And when you do that, and then suddenly someone wants their equity all at once, you can't get it because it's all leveraged to millions of homeowners who can't afford a home or can't afford the mortgage they supposedly should have been able to because the government allowed them to. So that has nothing to do with a boom and bust cycle. That is government policy combined with a bunch of other things, along with the Federal Reserve, inflating the dollar so that the banks actually have money to use to give to the homeowners who bought these speculative mortgages and people investing in those real estate options from their financial institutions. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it's there's a great book called Meltdown by Thomas Woods that explains how this works in a simple fashion and why it led up to that. It was about 10 years in the making, ever since, because the Community Reinvestment Act started with Clinton, I believe. And then Bush was like, everyone should own a home. That's the American dream. Everyone should own a home in America. So it just came home to roost in 2007. So
I mean, you could make this arbitrary connection of rising and falling to anything. You could make it be the stock market. You could have it be the housing market. You could have it be a TV program.
It could be
Like,
ratings.
the views you get, the ratings, they're really high, and now they're really low. But now they're really high again.
Yeah.
It's kind of arbitrary.
I want to know
Especially
how it...
considering nothing fluctuates in the Dark Souls series. Things just get progressively worse.
Right.
And there's this whole especially in Dark Souls 3, they hammer home the futility of man's efforts to keep things as they are.
Yeah, we like talking about the Freytag's pyramid in writing. Well, not really, the dramatic structure. I don't even like talking about it, but people reference it where you have the high point and low point of a story, rags to riches or riches to rags, that sort of thing. So you could apply it to many things, and that would make more sense because you're talking about a story, which Dark Souls is, which has a specific high and low point in terms of drama. And
you can't. And by the way, this is all capitalism: the low points and the high points. You can't have the low points without the government bailing you out to give you the high points.
Well, we could argue...
That's why they're called the high points.
We could argue if at least in America, if the central bank or the Federal Reserve stopped inflating the currency, there would be no bailouts. There would be no extra money produced. Now, the argument for most economists say, 1% inflation is a healthy inflation rate per year. And a lot of people say, well, there's too much inflation as a result of the 2008 financial crisis and etc. So maybe we need some deflation. Maybe that would be healthy for a better economy. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I have no idea. So we saw what happened to the Weimar Republic after World War II, World War One. Wheelbarrows full of what are they called? Not francs, but whatever the German bills were. Austrian francs with the francs, yeah. Wheelbarrows of money taken home every day, worthless stuff in Zimbabwe. Yep. I don't know what the modern example is. So maybe, just maybe, inflation is not a very good thing in most cases. So somehow she's going to tie this into wages remaining stagnant. I don't know. It's over my understanding of what she's talking about. Let's get back to the Souls games. There we go. Until recently, the Souls games' themes of sacrifice would have been more metaphorical than literal, but reality has overtaken allegory.
No, there's still literal sacrifices. You literally burn yourself fire if you so choose to.
Millions of low-paid service workers were forced to return to work during the peak of a pandemic with little protection or reassurance, depending on which country, depending on which policies. I know Canada has had the CERB, which is the COVID emergency relief thing, and then it stopped, and now it's back on employment insurance. Since
very few people actually work in the Souls series.
Yeah.
By the time you're exploring it, the common trend is most people you come across will be humanoids, so they will be human to some degree. Which means if they're not hollowing, they've got some kind of purpose that is keeping them going. They're sort of like a metaphorical thing that most of mankind can't actually die. They continue to resurrect, to continue doing their task if they have a purpose. If they don't have a purpose, they start to lose pieces of themselves, like I said, a bit like Alzheimer's, till they're just repeatedly doing some kind of random task without understanding why they do it. Which is kind of like a little bit of a metaphor to the actual person playing the game. Because you're not told any of this stuff directly. You just get told, go off and ring a bell or kill this giant or something. And you don't really know why you're doing it. You're just repeatedly throwing yourself at this brick wall to get it done.
Oh, dear.
Which is a nice little bit.
This sentence really irks me, but I find it hilarious. Millions of low-paid service workers were forced to return to work during a peak of a pandemic with little protection or reassurance, once again sacrificing their well-being, which, yes, whenever you have a job, you are giving your time and energy for the dollar. We all admit this. But this is to the altar of capital, whatever the hell that means, so that the Dow Jones Industrial Index, can go up a few points. That is insane. What she just said is
not true.
That is stupid.
You're still getting something out of it. You're getting money, so you sacrificing yourself on the altar in Dark Souls just fucking kills you. You gain nothing from that, and it's all for nothing because nothing goes up by a few points. Everything just stays at a low number of points and progresses downwards slower.
And to say that just the Dow can go up a few points, what part of the Dow is going up aside from the defensive
Can
stocks?
Could someone draw the altar of capital for me as well?
All
Whatever that would look like.
All the stocks the past half year, or at least most of the year, have been going down aside from a very few number. And those very few, I can pull up my stock charts and see which ones they were. But one of them was called Metro.
Money!
The one basically a grocery chain in North America. So people were buying a heck of a lot of groceries and disposable things, toiletries and what have you, as a result of the lockdown. So soap, towelettes, these sorts of things. Whereas the restaurant business, all the downtown private real estate for restaurants and other things like that, lost a heck of a lot of money. Same with entertainment and tourism. The oil tankers, even today, energy is still in the tubes. So, very few people have been contributing to the Dow or the altar of capitalism this year. So I don't know where they're getting that from. In the midst of a public health crisis, our government tells us that universal health care is impossible. Well, it's certainly not very feasible when everyone's suffering and there's not enough money to go around, while creating trillions of dollars out of thin air to bail out Wall Street. Okay, first off, that didn't happen yet, as far as I could tell.
Is it really creating, or is it taking a loan that they then have to pay back?
It depends, because different countries had different techniques. Saudi Arabia started selling a lot of their assets and buying, believe it or not, ETFs. And I don't know how that works, because ETFs are basically index funds from a firm, which is a financial institution, which are in America. So other countries are going to the biggest markets and saying, I want the safest investment, which is an ETF, or one of the index funds are very safe. And you don't have to worry about fluctuations too much. You could actually get an index ETF, like the Vanguard fund is a very big one. And they just track the entire index of the NASDAQ, for example. So they're doing that because they don't want to bother with all this nonsense of up and downs and buying the dip and all this crap, because they don't care. They just want a safe investment, and that's what buying the index does. You're not making much money, but you're safe. So millions of workers, disproportionately people of color. Here we go. Who are the minorities in Dark Souls aside from the humans?
Still the black people, probably.
Still the black
I have no idea.
The black humans?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. There's dwarves, sort of, but they're not really mentioned.
Message coming in.
I'm trying to think of someone who gets the short end of the stick, which is kind of hard to do since everyone loses out in the Soul series. That's why it's so depressing.
Yeah.
There's not a great deal of good anywhere. I think definitely the most privileged would still be the gods that still live. Gods and knights with a purpose and a duty. Everyone else is just basically going to be hollow and therefore clueless and sad.
This is another interesting sentence. I love talking about these things. Millions of workers, disproportionately people of color, continue to lose their jobs and face mass evictions. There were some freezing of rents. Some rents were thrown away for months, at least in Canada, parts of downtown. As the world's richest billionaires exploit the pandemic, really? How do they exploit it? I really want to know. Because if they can exploit it, why wasn't the government exploiting it? Because that would be really helpful.
I'm pretty sure they have just as shit a time. It's just in relativity to us, we're still having a time too. So nothing really changes. The difference between people doesn't get any different.
Yeah, to grow even more astronomically wealthy. Okay, in case you didn't know, it affected everyone negatively, even the super wealthy. And I saw a report 2 months ago by there's an actual financial firm who deals specifically with the super wealthy, so hundreds of millionaires, billionaires, that sort of thing. And they noticed a very slight change, but they sold a lot of their existing stocks in like energy, information tech, stuff like that, and even medical. They sold some of those, and they bought like gold. They bought things that were much more solid, but a lot less, like much more long term.
Chat are probably right. The people who represent people of color in the Soul series are probably dragons or demons because they're both hunted and killed for sport and misrepresented by society. Dragons and demons are both taught to everyone to be these terrifying, ferocious creatures. It's when you get to Dark Souls 3, you figure out they actually have a society.
Like cities. Or dragon cities, whatever you want to call them. Dragon groups. You still there with me there, voice? You seem to have cut out. Let me see if I can switch up the servers here. There we go. You still there, voice? Can't hear you, sir. I think we've lost you. I see you still in the call, but you're not actually coming through, unfortunately. No, still can't hear you. Appears you've lost the ability to communicate. Sadly. All right, I'm gonna keep going.
Hello?
There you are.
Hey,
You're
I
back.
don't know what happened.
I don't know. You just died for like you were still there, but I couldn't hear you. And you're gone again.
Oh no, this is terrible.
There you are.
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. I was like, oh no.
What happened?
Couldn't tell you. Don't know. So this is a very strange article on their interpretation of what happened this year with the pandemic. Here's again, this sentence is just strange. The working class is expected to labor all the same, creating wealth and shareholder value for a system that ultimately doesn't serve them. What do you talk? Like, what does that even mean? Which shareholder? Which sector? Which industry? Because I got laid off from my job in March, like many other people. I wasn't expected to labor to go on to help shareholders. My company wasn't publicly traded. What are you talking about? Strange interpretation of capitalism. Even as the world crumbles around us, we are asked to prolong the existence of a system in which we'll never truly benefit. Really? I'm quite sure jobs are beneficial to the people working under them.
And she's talking about just one side of this story. There's the other option of not doing this as well. You can, obviously, it's a choice at the end of the day. You either sacrifice yourself to the flame to keep the world in a perpetual state of decay, or you don't do that, and you take the gambit on bringing in something different, potentially better, but also potentially worse.
I just don't understand her mentality here, because this is a little inaccurate, and she's accusing the system, like the concept of economics, whatever she thinks capitalism is, and saying it's bad for us. It's like, why? No one's buying anything. It doesn't matter what economic system you've got if no one's buying anything. Even with this grim reality laid bare, we are constantly told there is no other way, that better things aren't possible. If there were better ways, we would have tried them by now. What's stopping you from trying them? Presidential candidate...
And again, no one gets like a boost in this outside of the likes of Jeff Bezos with Amazon. For most people, including famous people, like if I had like +2 happiness and Smud had like +4, and then COVID comes around and oh no, we both lose -2 happiness. I'm at 0 Smud is at 2. The difference is still 2 between us. We're just both less happy than we would be otherwise.
The only argument we can make in terms of the value of a company as a result of this year is, again, Metro went up in value, Amazon went up in value, Alibaba went down in stock value, even though they had record profits. So it's kind of, you can't blame this. The stock market is not a reflection of economics. It has nothing to do with an economic model. All it is a bunch of people trying to be rich. If I buy this, it's going to appreciate in value in 1 day, in 2 days, in 2 years, in 20 years. Who knows? They're all betting on horses in a horse race that they're choosing. They could buy out or sell it anytime they want. So I don't think she understands the difference between the economics, the GDP, the value of the dollar, and what the stock market is. I think she doesn't grasp that yet. But
I mean, there's so many other like factions and stuff of people, even human beings that like give their life to in the story anyway. They give their life to a covenant that has a different purpose than the ones that the gods created for mankind to follow. So there's literally ones where you just listen and obey rats, and you serve in the sewers to rats because fucking Dark Souls 2 is stupid. Or you know, you go off, you invade other people's worlds, which is a multiplayer thing, to go off and kill those characters. You earn points, you go back to a literal bone pile just to stock them up. There's no other purpose than the satisfaction of killing other people.
Is that the idea very similar to how Neil Gaiman believes that gods exist based off the belief that their followers have in them, so that the more followers you have, the more belief you have in the god, therefore the stronger the god? Is that...
Potentially. There's not a great deal of, as far as I can tell from lore, that the things you exist, the things you serve did once exist to some degree, but they've sort of fallen into mythos. I don't understand the rat one whatsoever. That one's just a bit stupid. But there was a god of, it's like Greek mythology. There's a god of blood. There's a god of death, and they became covenants that you can pledge yourself to serve. And there's very little that is offered as a world-changing thing. It's mainly just for your own self-interest to give yourself to serving one of these things, so you can get rewards to better yourself for the game if you want to.
All right. Well, she rambles on about Joe Biden promises salvation, but has no plan for changing things because the rich and powerful are still the same. Abolition demands of defunding the police and redirecting resources to healthcare, education, yada, 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 despite generations of black scholarship on the subject. Okay, so she's jumped from economics to wealth redistribution and the focus of what government should be doing and spending money on, which is no longer an economic question. It's just a political question or a political outlook. So I don't think that's easily translatable to the game at all. Or even in allegory, I don't think that'll work.
Who would these people even represent in this loose tie to real world economics?
Black scholarships. I don't think there's a proper relationship to that in the game. The entire 22 election season feels like the end of another cycle in the Age of Fire. Really? I don't see that. Even as the world crumbles around us. Okay, now you're being overly dramatic there, I think. We are once again being asked to prolong the existence of a system from which we'll never truly benefit. I don't understand this. Anyone can become...
I got a house.
Anyone can own stuff from working. Anyone can become rich if you work hard. That's the American dream. It's,
you got to put the graft in, but yes, you do benefit. You wouldn't have this job typing this right now otherwise.
Yeah. And you don't have to say capitalism is bad because I can get this job in another economic system. Yeah, but you wouldn't have as much money. You wouldn't get as much benefits. You wouldn't get as much stuff unless you had capitalism. So there's obvious benefits to having a free as possible marketplace if you're talking about wealth creation, to the individual, not to the mega rich or whatever. That's kind of weird. There's plenty of reasons why the rich get richer. It's because they know how to invest and save money. It's really basic stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if capitalism didn't exist, Vice wouldn't have to pay you, and therefore, why would you be here?
So here's another controversial statement or sentence. Dark Souls is not a pessimistic game. You're like, really? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Does it get brighter as the story goes on?
You literally wake up in Dark Souls 3, and people just say that you're worth nothing. In 3, you literally have no value. You're a character that wasn't even able to die correctly. And that's why I actually like 3 so much, because the other 2 talk about how you have some kind of fate to go off and do this great thing. Whereas the story in 3 is just sort of like, hey, you fucking suck. Might as well go do some things before the world ends. If you feel like being another one of the hundreds of people that have thrown their lives away to try and do something futile, then yeah, go ahead.
So there's alternative dark endings where you either let the flame die out or take its power for yourself. The rest of the world, be damned, this ending suggests that the player has claimed it in service to their undead kindred, which is humanity, I assume.
Well, the ones where you just sort of leave the flame, that's or force it to die out, is just sort of you taking a decision of either not doing anything at all and let things progress as they are, or you make the change and actually take the risk, see what actually happens. The one she's talking about where you take the flame for yourself is a very separate ending where you take the remaining power to rule over the dark world, quote unquote, which would be mankind. Once the age of fire changes to whatever the next age is, age of dark, you basically are the lord of that.
Okay.
Which just sounds like serving in self-interest. I think that's an ending in Dark Souls 3, I think.
So
yeah, I think so.
As Yuria of Londor, the character who nudges you toward this ending, puts it, the Age of Fire was founded by the old gods, sustained by the linking of the fire, but the gods are no more. And the all-powerful fire deserveth a new heir. So you're just making a new god, essentially. Yeah.
So how is that not just doing capitalism again under a different name? If your theory holds.
If the original god you said to relink the fire and say, no, I'll take the fire, I'll use it,
and I'll do it this time. That's based on your own loose terms. Whoever this is that wrote this for Vice, that's just capitalism again. Only this time it's good? Question mark.
It's better because I do it. I don't know.
I mean, I can neither confirm if the Lord of Hollows ending is good or bad. It just seems like it's all in self-interest to your character. It's perceived as quite a selfish decision.
All right.
Or it's perceived as a decision for the good of mankind, but you're taking a selfish stance in it and wanting to control things. It's also very hinted at that you're being used as a puppet.
Oh, really? Interesting. Well, it sounds like a very interpretive ending, regardless of what you choose.
Yeah. They're all very interpretational. It's why I don't tend to listen to stuff like Vati Video as anything other than this is my opinion and on what it could mean, and here's my evidence, because I don't know. This is the thing about Dark Souls as a story. It's good based on what you can get out of it on a personal level, but in terms of an actual story of coherency, it's intentionally vague and convoluted because it wants people to discuss. It wants people to discuss these things about the game, so there's actually a conversation to be had.
Here's a very.
If it was very straightforward, if it was very straightforward, people wouldn't talk about it as much, which is why I think it was intentional for it to be even poorly written to a degree.
That is kind of not the opposite, but kind of the effect Metal Gear Solid has on people. There's so much stuff you don't quite understand what it all means, but it must mean something, and you're always trying to figure it out.
people then say the story must be good because why would we be talking about it so much? It's like, no, the story's actually it's done well at serving its purpose, but it's still intentionally strangely written because there's so many things that could happen in such a different order based on how you piece it together in your heads that someone else might have came up with. So like you may think of it as like it was A, B, C, D, E at these events, but then someone goes, no, it was A, F, D, C, B, A. And you go, what? Why? It's like, well, here's my evidence. It's like, okay, but do any of us have actual concrete proof, or are we just guessing? It's like, we're just guessing. Oh, okay.
So her minimalist approach to what Dark Souls is in 2020 is that it could teach us is that we can no longer afford to simply follow the path laid by those who hold power over us. And I'm like, okay, are you going to be an entrepreneur? I mean, go for it. I mean, go crazy.
I mean, no one technically holds power over you because there's always a decision to be made. There are people that try and manipulate you and say like, hey, Gwyn was a cool guy, go do this thing and keep his age going. And you can be like, yeah, but do I believe you? I'll make that decision for myself. It's like you can read into it what you want as you will. It's why, again, the story's quite open-ended because then you can look at pieces of evidence to be like, I don't know if I trust this character and should listen to them kind of thing.
So here we have a very strange, this is a very broad idea that she's jumping into, saying governments, institutions fail us. The ability to self-organize is taking a new critical importance as a result of technology. I agree. We have very little need for all these other organizations when we have like Facebook. We can communicate all fantastically on there, and we don't need landlines anymore. We have cell phones. Each individual. Yeah, there's all kinds of great things from tech. Discord is a great way to communicate all your friends in a group. All sorts of great tools we have at our disposal. This self-determination has caused a surge of interest in mutual aid efforts. That's true.
What does that mean? Sorry.
Meaning I can give to not necessarily a charity, but I can give to like a local group of people like my neighbors because they don't have any chicken. Because I just went shopping for chicken and I bought like 10 chickens because they were on sale, and that's Costco, and and they want to buy some chicken off me, and I won't charge them for it because I'm nice, and it's like, $7 chicken or whatever. They love it. They don't have to go spend the 2 hours to and from Costco because of all the lineups. So yeah, that's what we've been doing this year. We've been going shopping for each other and saving time. Efforts that have been practiced by anarchists, indigenous people, and marginalized communities for pretty much anyone who wants something they can't get. You could say the black market. You could say someone who wants...
I mean, how is this any different to basically being done on a larger scale, i.e. supermarkets?
Yeah. No, it's
I want this thing, and then someone goes, hey, I have this thing. Yeah. Here, give me some money, and you can have this thing.
It's like I have two brokerage firms, and the one firm I have access...
Trade.
Yeah, I want to buy something in India, or I want to buy something in the UK. My online brokerage firm doesn't have access to that market, but my other one does. And I know that, I don't know, Altria or some American company on the NYSE is really low in cost. I want to buy it, but I can't do that from my Canadian online brokerage firm. So I contact them and they do it for me. It's the same thing. Whether I talk to my neighbors, hey, do you get any San Marzano crushed tomatoes? It's like, yeah, I just imported them from Italy. Fantastic. I'll buy them off you.
It's like, how is this not something that can be considered mutual aid? If you set up a bar because you want to serve people drinks and you have an abundance of alcohol and where to get it, and then people be like, yeah, I'd like a drink on a Sunday afternoon. It's like, great, let's do a trade. I will give you a drink, you give me money, and then you set up a business. At what point does that idea become capitalism?
I know. It's like, I want to sell you something. They're giving me all these loops to jump through. Okay, I got to make a bubble. I got to make a plastic container to put two people in to sit outside so they can have a drink and we can serve them food, and I have to wear a helmet and all this crap to go to your table. It's all this nonsense. You're like, okay, come on. But they have to do that. They have to survive because the government's not allowing them any other options.
Yep.
So I've stopped taking photos when I go out because it's just sad to see. I can't see my bartender. I can't see my server. Sometimes they're cooking right in front of you, actually, which is the barbecue's right outside because it's hot and the temperature's not as warm as it used to be. So they use that instead of turning on the gas. All these other silly things. Eating outside is the only option now. Same with indoors. You're allowed 8 people indoors. Like what? 8? How do you space that out? How do you enforce that? It's getting silly. But that's temporary for this year. I'm sure it'll change in another month. Toronto. Anyway, as the COVID crisis communities took matters in their own hands. Yep, that's true. Rather than wait in vain for the government to help, these volunteer efforts. Okay, unless they're growing their own crops, everyone's going to the grocery store. Okay? It's just doing the same thing only 3 times as much. So you go shopping once a week last year, now you go 3 times a week. That's all it is. Or you buy twice as much when you go. Okay. And that would only be possible if we have a capitalist system. If we didn't have marketplaces and free markets, or at least corner stores, we would not be able to buy what we wanted. So, here we go. Back to Miyazaki. May seem bleak and unforgiving, but it actually challenges us to believe in the possibility of transformation. I guess.
I suppose that could be a theme. There's so many ideas on what the themes of Dark Souls could be, because again, it's so open to interpretation based on who you are as an individual.
The eerie grimness.
Yeah.
Seems authentic to our modern times. It's like, really? A bunch of undead creatures and gargoyles and dragons running around? It's like, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it, and I don't see anyone actually throwing themselves in front of a moving car or something to keep Trump in power or keep the money where it currently is. I don't see people purposefully going out and giving their lives to do this kind of stuff. It seems like people getting by every day as they have since the beginning of time.
I love this. Now she's quoting Ursula.
And that is something people in the Souls world specifically cannot do, because they're enslaved to their own basic instincts, because they've lost any semblance of what it meant to be an individual, or for the most part, your character are exempt from that description.
This is great. I love Ursula Le Guin as a writer, but to paraphrase her, okay, because paraphrasing is always helpful, the power of capitalism seems inescapable, but so did the divine right of kings. And I don't know where exactly she's getting that. I really would like to know, because I bet the paraphrasing destroys the actual prose that Le Guin came up with and what she was trying to say. But the divine right of kings has nothing to do with an economic system. You're talking like... it's
the phrase above, anyway, is that like the cursed humans of Dark Souls, we've been told there is no alternative to the current system. That's not true. You're given plenty of other people's perspectives across all 3 of the games, and it's left to you as the character to make your decision based on what little pieces of information each person might pick up. For example, I might pick up a weapon and read its description, and it talks about how this person who's sent me off to go do a thing is actually affiliated with someone who's quite bad. Or and then someone else might play the game, ignore that completely, and then just trust that character without question, because they haven't investigated that little piece of lore that might put some doubts in their head.
I seem to recall this. Was it this year during the riots? They created their own country in like a square block of some part of Washington or whatever for about
maybe
2 weeks or so.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, it was like this communal area. I was like, what is going on here? Why are you guys declaring virgin soil as the birth of a new country. I'm like, what is? How did this happen? Like, what's going on? I don't think that lasted too long. Maybe it's still going on. I'm not familiar with the plight of the birth of nations, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's the best example I can think of is that in Dark Souls 1, there's a character you meet halfway through the game who basically is apparently affiliated with Gwyn, the guy who gave his life for that starts off the whole sequence of events, and he pushes you to link the flame. But then there's like and I'm not kidding, it's like there's an evil twin version of this guy who basically says, no, Gwyn is actually the reason everything is like this. You need to let things stay as it is. And then your decision is based on which one of those two characters you decide to trust, essentially.
Oh, cool. See, I like these things which make you question the actual plot. You're like, why are we doing this? Yeah. How is this happening? How does this work? How does it not work? I like giving the audience...
Dark Souls 1's story doesn't even begin with that kind of thing. You're let out of a prison cell by someone, and then that someone gets killed because of he gets killed trying to get you out of this prison, and then he's like, hey, listen, would you do me a favor when you escape here? Go do this thing. And then you as a character have no idea about the greater world building. You might just be like, right, okay, this guy let me out. I will go do this. You as the player character be like, yeah, all right. He helped me, I'll go do this thing for him. And then you basically fall down a rabbit hole, and it's like uncovering an eldritch horror sort of thing, and then you're like, wow, this is far bigger than I thought, and then you realise the guy at the beginning of the game let you out for this specific reason. He just didn't tell you. That's the kind of stuff, and it's placated through the Souls series, this kind of stuff, from 1 through to 3, which is... Again, why so many people have different perspectives. They like, did this character let you out for this reason? Or did they do it simply to be kind? Or was it a different thing altogether? Or were they being used in the first place? And you'd be like, wow, this is why this fucking series is still discussed.
Yeah.
Because this is never confirmed.
It was never meant to be solidified in the story and clear.
Yeah. And again... It's good in a sense that you keep people talking, you keep the games popular, they're still played even now, but whether it was it was written intentionally bad for that reason or not, it's still badly written.
Yeah. So and
people don't seem to like that.
So this author is believing we need this message of unity, a call to recognize the truth of our collective power. I don't know exactly what she's referring to there. That could be communism, that could be a form of socialism, that could be a form of tribalism. Pick one, it doesn't really matter. And work together to bring about the world we deserve. What's stopping you from doing what you want right now, lady? It's kind of strange to talk about all these elements within the veil of a video game world and saying, well, look what Dark Souls does with its eldritch horrors and the message of uncertainty, what you should be doing at the end of a story. Say that with any game that has choice at the end, where we're told, hey, do you like House in New Vegas? Do you like his idea of a utopia or advancing humanity faster than it would have been without the House? Maybe. How about the Roman Empire? That's a great idea. That seemed to work fine so far with a bunch of brutal militaristic people.
It's literally, it's like how things work in the real world. You're given a certain amount of information from a source that you then have to decide is true or false, and then you might find additional information that changes that entirely, and then you have a different perspective on the person that told you that in the first place. Or you find someone else who says, yes, but what about, have you thought about this and why they might be doing this, and here's my set of information, and then you fill in the gaps. You'd be like, oh god, now I have conflicting things going on. I have to pick a lane. What do I do? This is how things work for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not a unique thing to Dark Souls. It's not a unique thing to the real world, and it's not unique to capitalism. It's how knowledge and discussion works.
Yeah. So clearly, this is someone who's only read a few books, tried to see relationships and patterns in what she's been reading about and a video game she happened to play. And I'm not bashing her for saying this is, you can't do that. It's just the lessons you're learning are not easily translatable, and they're certainly not mirrored properly from the world of a fantastical apocalyptic world, and comparing that to, well, everyone's business got shut down this year and you can't go out as much, therefore we have to create an underground network of people trading. You're like, what? Okay. You want to start that? Be my guest, lady. And she's in New York. She's in New York, one of the biggest cities in the world. Like, all right. Maybe it's just one of those first world problems. I don't know. Makes you think. Anyway,
I gotta say,
fun to ramble on about, especially on a topic we or gaming it rather, specifically the Dark Souls series, and the ideas of cycles. It's pretty common pattern in all kinds of genres of stories: science fiction, fantasy, even contemporary stories, family life, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is not something that, as far as stories go, none of this is unique to the Souls series in terms of writing. There's plenty of other literature out there that does this as well, and some do it better, some do it worse. But I think I couldn't tell you why, but Dark Souls was always regarded as like one of the stories that does this. When you ask, people, just generally, if you had to pick a thing that represents X, Y, Z, what would come to your mind? And they'd probably say the Soul series. I couldn't give you an explanation as to why.
Yeah. It sounds vaguely familiar, like many other games I follow. That's like, the story wasn't clear enough, but it represents so many things. You're like, oh, yeah, it's unclear. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go through some super chats because we completely neglected them, and we're going to finish off soon. So, John Lemley, Vice was a mistake. I'm not sure what Vice is. I don't know what's the focus. They seem to have.
It's a nice departure from videos and stuff, I suppose.
Nice, not safe for work, gaming, sports, travel, opinion, photos, shop, magazine, LGBTQ, drugs, health, food, entertainment, regeneration, tech, Canadian news, because I'm in Canada, obviously.
Regeneration?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Sustainability is changing the way Canadians live and work and play. Yeah. Yes, I think this year has changed everyone's lives in a certain way. That's true.
Yeah.
Nova Zero, Code Vein. There's a great example of a.
Yes, that was the anime one I was trying to think of earlier.
Is
weeby
it
one.
Souls Light? What is it?
Yes, it's pretty Souls-like, but with anime boobs everywhere.
There we go. So you got to appeal to the masses.
Exactly.
Anyway, don't you just love how these people have once again proven that communication is never truly communism has never truly been tried? Accessible games, ew, yeah. Same with capitalism. I guess we could make the same argument. Jake the Surgeon, which brand should I drink to this obviously intellectual take? Bleach or parasite-infested waters? Go for the alcohol. Always go for the alcohol.
Definitely.
Yeah, pick your favorite. Always pick it. Don't waste your time waiting on what to consume. Consume the best now. Don't wait. Unless you don't like consuming alcohol, then choose, I don't know, fruit juice, whatever your favorite fruit juice is. Space Wolf Black Mane. Does this person realize that people need currency to buy resources or trade resources, unless you're going to the barter system? So yes, you do. You're bartering for stuff with money. Making something a right does stop scarcity. Water doesn't just magic in a desert. I think I get,
very true.
I get what you're trying to say. Yes. And Tom the Cat. Simple History just dropped a video on the richest people in history. The timing is amazing. You're going to get all these videos talking about, what are the billionaires doing? What are the mega rich doing? How much money has Bill Gates been giving to charities this year? It's always going to come out. So not a, it's smart to listen to all these people for investing advice, but really it comes down to you and what you're doing for your future. What do you want? Do you want to sell a lot of your investments in 20 years' time? A lot of people do that. It's a very safe way of investing. Or do you want residual income? Do you want monthly income? Do you want quarterly income? Do you want to speculate on leveraged stocks or indices or mutual funds, which are very safe? You do you. You invest the way you want to invest. But I do recommend everyone, I should probably do a video on this because I have so much knowledge. I should probably just talk about putting away money for education, putting away money for your house, for income, if you want that sort of investment portfolio. It's important. And I think they should have taught this way back in grade school. It's a simple lesson. You spend whatever you make, spend less. That's a basic rule of life. If it's money, whether it's time, whatever you're devoting to, spend less of it, of whatever you're giving away, whatever you're trading for it. Keep what you own. Don't throw it all away. Anyway, this was fun. I like this sort of weird article that's interpretive and having
It's unique.
It was truly unique. I wasn't expecting some weird interpretation of Dark Souls to an economic model and how it's not really wrong.
If anyone's wondering what my favorite out of the three is, it's 3.
Really?
Just saying.
I thought it was the first one.
Yep. And if you say anything else, you're wrong.
Oh, okay. Do you,
No, out the 3 options, I do like Dark Souls 3 the best because I live the games for the boss fights, and I think the ones in Dark Souls 3 are really good. But my personal favorite would be none of them. It would be Bloodborne.
So
because I'm a huge geek for the whole, eldritch horror, monsters and werewolves and aliens and H.P. Lovecraft style writing.
Having a what is it called? A bestiary of like hundreds and hundreds of foes, and like Castlevania like environments.
You go off, you arrive at a city in the middle of a plague, very Victorian era.
Ooh.
It's a Victorian era Bloodborne where there's some sort of contagion that's gone out that turns people into beasts, and then you find out the cause is celestial beings that came from a long time ago. It's because people dug too deep, as the story goes.
Yeah.
That is my favourite. And I think it's also the easiest to fucking understand as a story as well, which is why I think the story in its best.
I always say my guilty pleasure has always been Castlevania, just because the story has always been weak. It's always been like it's there. It's like, there's some evil thing, Dracula, whatever, and you have to get from A to Z, and there's this huge Metroid-esque level, and you have to backtrack and do all these things. And I love that adventure. I love that the bestiary. I love the item lists. Symphony of the Night's always my classic favorite, but even the DS games of Castlevania, the Kickstarter by Iga when he got kicked out of Konami and did his own thing. What the hell was it called? Because I had to uninstall most of my games from Steam because of my hard drive. I don't have them in my brain right off the bat. All I have is Among Us. So, which reminds me.
What do you think of the? Because you watch anime, right?
I recently saw one. Yes, it was the. Do you like picking up girls in a dungeon? Part 3, the 3rd season. Which is a stupid title, but yeah, but it's still an actual.
I was talking about the Castlevania one.
Oh, it was brilliant. I love it. Yeah. A lot of people hate it because of the adult themes, but I think it's brilliant. There's a lot of elements I don't like because I'm a hardcore Castlevania 3 fan because that was my favorite game on the NES. And I'm like, okay, they changed this. They made Sypha a Mexican girl for whatever reason. She's like an elemental
I thought she was
god.
German or something.
She was a long blonde-haired statue, as far as I remember, and then she ends up hooking up with Trevor, which is fine. But I really liked that they used that lore and they connected it with Symphony of the Night because that's what Iga did. So I really even just to do that is amazing. It blows my mind that they were able to take 40, 50-year-old, or 30, 40-year-old story from a video game, which didn't have much of a story to begin with, and clean it up, make it more adult. Like it's still an anime, but it's an adult anime. It's a serious anime. It's not goofy. It's not fan servicey. It's not exploitative. It is adult. And there were some things I'm like, maybe the whip shouldn't do that. Maybe Alucard's a bit overpowered. That's fine. I'm not too harsh on it, because it's all just a work for the fans. Like, really, it's ultimately for the fans, and that's where you get like, oh well, Alucard's suddenly gay or he doesn't care. It's like, it doesn't bother me. That's fine. It's totally cool, and they obviously did some new stuff, and I'm very forgiving of it because it's entertaining. And if I watch it again, I'll just be as entertained. So
I need to sit down and maybe invest some time. I don't tend to watch anime, but it's one that's been recommended to me before because I really like certain art styles.
It looks good.
So maybe it's worth checking out.
I don't know if it's the same studio who did the recent one from Netflix, which is the Greco-Roman gods, I believe, Child of Zeus or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it has Elias Tefexis, who is the voice actor for Adam Jensen in Deus Ex, and he does a bunch of other voice acting as well. He's in there. That's why I remembered the trailer. But it's basically the Perseus story, I believe. I think.
Okay.
So, fantastic stuff. Anyway, I might go into a game night. I'm going to go bug game people on my channel, see if they want to have it, because we were supposed to have one yesterday, but we started too late with SmudCast, so we're probably going to hopefully have some games coming today. And I will talk to you.
It's still pretty early. I might be able to join you.
Yeah, we'll go ask everyone, see if they're back home from work. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Have yourself a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
Hey.